Good morning. Welcome to the online worship service for the First Unitarian Church of Hobart, Indiana. If you're joining us by phone or by video, thank you and congratulations. Today is one of many times you will find us and that we will be doing things in creative ways today. In the simplest term, the building is closed, but the congregation is open, and we are here. I'm starting with announcements because we don't have an order of service, and there are a lot of things we need to talk about just for a short time here. Welcome to this online service, and at this point, I and your leaders are taking the advice of state officials and have stopped all in-person church activity for the several weeks ahead, if not months. Many thanks to our board, our worship team, and the staff, and many volunteers who are wrestling with the hard decisions rapidly changing in these conditions now. The collective reflection and effort by itself shows one of the many strengths of this congregation and our community. In advance of the service, I want to thank our office administrator, Valerie Lambert, for her work in this transitional time, and to our technology director, James Johnson, who is producing today's worship service. Also, thank you to our music director, Jeremy Jacobson, for his excellent musical talents, which recorded for us today and for future services. And we are recording today's service for future sharing. Thank you to our interim director of religious education, Janet French, for all of her efforts, both in religious education and in working with pastoral care, and to John Halstead for his help with organizing some of our pastoral outreach, including today's social times. After the service, we will offer space for anyone who wishes to have a virtual coffee hour. Got to bring your own coffee. I believe this format works best with one person talking at a time, but they will moderate that. Also, on a pastoral note, I realize that many people will be having changes in their circumstances due to work and childcare. We do have some modest funds available through the church through a minister's discretionary fund for members in financial need. Donations to that fund are, of course, always welcome. Please contact me or the office if you have interest in being assisted. People are welcome to make phone and Zoom appointments with me over the coming weeks. I do have some kids at home, so we may have to schedule a time to do that. But if the matter is important, please feel free to get in touch with me. Our caring members are also working on ways that people will be checking in with each other by phone and other ways throughout the weeks ahead. Our office staff and DRE are available by phone and email as well. On a practical note, we won't, of course, be passing the offering basket for some weeks. Contact the office for ways to send in pledges and donations, and also see the video feed link later on in the service. We are also in the middle of our annual pledge drive, like many congregations, so please keep in mind that contribution, which will keep the congregation sustained for the future. Please check and read your email from the church and the website and Facebook groups for updates. And now let us enter into a time of sacred space by taking a collective breath. And now we will listen to our prelude by our music director, Jeremy Jacobson. Thank you. Got it. Please join us in lighting our flaming chalice as we say together the words, "We gather this hour as a people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life that we share together. Our opening words this morning are "Our Lives May Be on Hold" by the Reverend Dennis McCarty, who actually wrote this week. Please follow along, and I will lead, and you may join in the response or read all of it if you wish. Let us begin. Our lives may be on hold, but our hearts of love and hands of fellowship reach out across all distances. The world's necessity may dictate actions of our bodies, when and where we travel physically or gather or depart. But neither fate nor human walls impose a barrier that can hold out love. Affection, each of us for others, forms an energy transcending social distances. A faith made of benevolent community leaps over walls and pierces barricades the way bright light shines through a glass. Our energy is formed of mutual regard, high sentiment we hold in common. It is our own, to share or hold and subject only to our own volition. Indeed, our lives may be on hold, but our relationships cut through misfortune. Each of us bears power to enhance the lives of others, even from a distance. Ties that bind the faithful are not subject to the whims of circumstance. Our hearts belong to us, and we will share them through the tumult of the day. In this we shall be governed by the best within us. We shall be unbowed by fear. Misfortune shall be vanquished, and the human spirit shall emerge triumphant, as it always has. Come and join us in our opening hymn, "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing." Come thou fount of every blessing, tune our hearts to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. While the hope of life's perfection fills our heart with joy and love, teach us ever to be faithful, may we still thy goodness prove. Come thou fount of every vision, lift our eyes to what may come. See the lion and the young lamb dwell together in thy home. Hear the cry of woeful silent, feel our love grow like the sun. When we all serve one another, then our heaven is begun. Come thou fount of inspiration, turn our lives to higher ways. Lift our gloom and desperation, show the promise of this day. Help us bind ourselves in union, help our hands tell of our love. With thine aid, O fount of justice, earth be fair as heaven above. Please join us now in our affirmation of faith. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. Service is its prayer, and this is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please join us on our doxology. From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue. Amen. I hope you're singing better than I am. Please join us now in a time of reflection. We have a lot going on in our lives. There are many things that are happening to all of us. We are still having our birthdays. We're still sharing our anniversaries. We still have children who have to get up in the morning. We still have parents who go to bed at night. And each of us has those things that we're still trying to accomplish, despite all the various limitations and vicissitudes. Keep in your heart that you are not alone and that we are here. I'd like to read a meditation written by the Reverend Dr. Lynn Unger, a Unitarian Universalist minister. She wrote this just a week or so ago, and it has recently been featured in the Chicago Tribune. It's called Pandemic. Pandemic. What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel. Cease from buying and selling. Give up, just for now, on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has come clear. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we shall live. Please keep in mind, the mystery is that we are so connected, even when we are so far apart. Please join now in a moment in silence and meditation, reflection, or prayer, as you will. Amen, and blessed be. Please join us in our hymn of reflection. I know this rose will open. We'll sing this through 3 times. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I'm glad we could join together today. It's very blustery out. Earlier today, I almost wasn't sure how I was going to make today happen. We lost power here in my building in my end of town in St. Charles. I hope that your day has been less eventful so far. Normally, I would ask everybody what they think next Wednesday is going to be, and I'd probably get responses like, well, it's the 1st of April, it's April Fool's Day, a number of things. It's also 3 weeks since I finally realized that we were going to have to start entering into this kind of situation that we're in now. Well, it is the 1st of April, and it is April Fool's Day. But it's also 4 months since January 1st, New Year's Day. And that makes it an excellent opportunity maybe to look back and check on some of the things we may have committed ourselves to in the new year, such as resolutions. I know some of us have kept those or made them, and some of us have kept those. Some of us may be feeling guilty about either not making them or making them and not keeping them. Sometimes when we make promises to ourselves, we sometimes set ourselves up for guilt trips and head trips. A friend of mine once commented after being asked what his resolutions were for a new year that he wasn't going to tell anyone because if he'd even made any. He said that if he told people and they didn't follow through, it would look like he was a failure. He would appear to be less than perfect in the eyes of his friends and family. Several of his friends then began asking him when he'd learned to walk on water. The truth is that most of us can relate to what he was talking about. Most of us are suffering from various degrees of insecurity, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, and/or spiritual. So here we go, making promises and resolutions to ourselves that we may or may not keep. Then potential for failure is in every chocolate chip cookie we see or every cigarette someone else lights up within a half a mile of us. Every morning we contemplate sleeping in instead of getting up and exercising, and every day we could possibly get away without balancing our checkbooks, and every sale that we might see on Amazon. You know, the potential for failure is everywhere. So what's the big deal? Well, so we fall off the proverbial horse and we proverbially get back on, and proverbially we keep on going. Well, for one thing, life really isn't a proverb. There really are usually real consequences rather than proverbial ones for our actions. We live in a society that is constantly reminding us that failure is not an option. We are bombarded with images of idealized faces, bodies, jobs, clothes, food, relationships, lives. Conform, be perfect, or have your very sense of your right to exist challenged. Be perfect, or else. Perfection is a state of absolute flawlessness. As flawed and finite beings, there is no way we can do any of that, or that we can become or be perfect, and there is nothing that will make us perfect. Even if we receive a score of 10 in the Olympics, we are not perfect. Perfectionism is in many ways a striving for purity, to be pure, to be guiltless, to be found acceptable by whatever standards we encounter in our families, our churches, our society, and our inner committees. And yes, we all have those inner committees. Life coach Julie Fuyamano writes that perfectionism is a time-stealing, energy-draining monster. It forces you to strive for unachievable outcomes because no matter what you do, it's not good enough. In your pursuit of perfect, you refuse to see things as they are, but rather insist on living up to some illusion that doesn't exist. It's always just out of reach, she says. Perfectionism is a black hole trapping you from giving yourself to the world. Perfectionists will often not complete things, not start things, or not take on projects for fear of not being able to perform perfectly. Perfectionists fear making mistakes and therefore find themselves stressed, in constant state of worry over what could happen, and focus desperately on not failing. They maintain unrealistic expectations of themselves and of others, and will often micromanage, causing undue stress on themselves and others. Perfectionism makes us despair of ever being enough. As we stand in the midst of the wreckage from the inevitable brokenness of our lives, we feel less than enough to be able to cope with it all. And right now in our lives, that's a really serious feeling. And in the truth, that often we aren't enough. And yet the paradox is that at the same time, we really are enough. I want you to hear that. We are enough. What perfectionism does then is it cuts us off from the ability to recognize and embrace our shortcomings and our unique humanity. It does not allow us to be able to be at peace with ourselves. We are then not only dealing with the immediate shortcoming or flaw, but then the inability to cope with it also becomes another flaw and an imperfection in itself. Perfectionism tends to compound our perceptions of our frailties. One of my favorite singer-songwriters is a guy named Chuck Pyle from Colorado. He's also known as the Zen Cowboy. In one of his songs, he talks about how we often end up feeling angry for feeling guilty about being ashamed of being afraid. We become blocked and less able to make real changes for the better. The Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker, the former president of our seminary, Star King School for the Ministry in California, shared a number of years ago through a series of stories that the biggest problem that non-colored people have in our society in dealing with racism and other prejudices is in not wanting to own them. And the reason for not wanting to own them is our desire to maintain our illusion of innocence. While we Americans have a wise legal tradition of being innocent until proven guilty, we also have inherited a near obsession with perfection and spiritual purity, of being guiltless, of being lest we should not be among the saved. And we do not want to be guilty of the stains of our own heritage and our experiences and the institutions we've inherited. This can be hard for us to hear. It's tough stuff. And I know that I resist it all the time. And because so many of us have been made to feel guilty for things we really don't have responsibilities for, such as family of origin issues, we're often unwilling to accept perhaps those things that are ours to own. So we play head games to get around our condition. One such is to deny our ancestors and the privileges that we have because of the institutions we've inherited from them. We feel that if we can say to those who are oppressed, "Your enemies are my enemies," then erroneously we can conclude, "Therefore I'm just like you and not to be blamed." In Eastern religious traditions, innocence is the province of children. But in adults, it is wisdom, which comes from experience, that is most highly prized. The desire for innocence in an adult is seen as a type of foolishness which denies the often unpleasant realities of our life, including our own guilt and complicities. By denying our guilt and our responsibilities, we cut ourselves off from much of the possibility for wisdom. In the Christian tradition, St. George kills the dragon. Most sociopsychologists now agree that this is a cultural myth for not dealing with our own shadows, our guilt, and our fears. It is an act of denial in the service of the illusion of guiltlessness and purity. Much of the message of Jesus of Nazareth was about how acceptable we already are in our brokenness. He was challenging the Pharisaic codes, which required strict adherence to prescribed commandments or mitzvahs of behavior. Life in his community had become legalistic and obsessed with purity. This is the potency of the story of the Good Samaritan, who belonged to the most impure social group a Jew could think of. Or the story of the prodigal son, who, after violating many social taboos, including tending swine, a most unclean act, he was taken back into the bosom of his family. I find it sadly ironic that conservative Christianity has hence become so obsessed with making Jewish and Christian scriptures into prescriptive legalistic systems of behavior, which are then conveniently interpreted to reflect their own neuroses and prejudices. They have apparently lost the rabbinical message of learning and becoming wise. They have instead exchanged it for perfectionistic grasping after a false promise of a state of purity in order to somehow be more acceptable within the cosmic order of things. The stresses of perfectionism are put on us so that we can be worthy in the sight of God or to be part of the celestial in-crowd in the great hereafter. And yet, part of the redemptive message of the Judean rabbi is that we are already enough. We are already enough. With compassion and courage, we can learn, becoming wise and enlightened from our ancestors and with our own brokenness, as well as those of others. In turn, we then have the opportunity for real redemption and transformation, not just some form of absolution. With wisdom, we hopefully move towards reaching for excellence instead of perfection. Excellence is the becoming or doing the best that we are capable of within the bonds of our human and finite existence. Unfortunately, the two are often confused in our society, and therefore we become confused also. This reminds me of a story. When I was 11 years old, I auditioned for and got into the then world-famous Texas Boys Choir. I started out as the equivalent of a third-team player in sports and worked my way up to the local resident choir, which did the local gigs, while the touring choir did the international stuff in Carnegie Hall. Now, this was back in the 1970s. And I got a really profound musical education. 18 months or so, I was in the choir. I also picked up a rather warped sense of achievement and personal self-esteem. As 11 through 15-year-old boys, we were rehearsed 2 hours a day every weekday and up to 8 hours on most Saturdays. That's not a bad thing. It kept us off the streets and probably helped instill a lot of discipline in us. What I think was not so healthy was the use of the word excellence for a perfectionistic and flawless quality of performance being demanded of children. This demand for utter perfection was backed up with threats and acts of ostracization and physical violence. Today, some of this would be called child abuse. But then it was put up with for a long while, and for the sake of the prestige and in the name of excellence in music. This is one way in which perfection and excellence get confused as synonyms. I've spent many years undoing these perfectionistic imperatives, and I've spent many years undoing these things. And many of you, I'm sure, have also similar stories from your own lives or the lives of others. What helped me make sense of these and other experiences and to sort out the differences between perfectionism and excellence is the following, which I learned several years ago. And if you take nothing else away from you today from this, please take this with you. It's this. Perfection does not tolerate mistakes. Excellence incorporates them. Perfection does not tolerate mistakes. Excellence incorporates them. Perfection, like purity, strives for an unblemished flawlessness, intolerant of failure. On the other hand, excellence, like wisdom, accepts failure and learns from it as part of the process of being a living, growing human being in a flawed and finite world. Now, a lot of you are watching movies right now, and one I might recommend is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And in that cult movie classic, our two failing slacker high school seniors are given opportunities to redeem themselves and save their necks. So I'm going to warn you, there are some spoilers here. By being forced to make choices and take real risks, they encounter more than just figures in history as they travel through time, but they learn about themselves and the world, becoming more confident and wiser in the process. No matter how many boneheaded mistakes they make at first, they eventually get the sense of what it is they are doing and mature in the process. They move from foolishness to they grow from being clowns to being answers of accumulated knowledge and wisdom. True to their own motto, they learn to be excellent dudes. In a similar vein, there is a popular t-shirt slogan that proudly proclaims, "I'm not perfect, but parts of me are excellent." Wisdom and enlightenment come from experience, including our failures. Study after study has shown that one of the strengths of those who succeed is usually a sense of optimism and learning from our mistakes, and then turning around and trying again. History is full of the stories of famous people who make enormous, often redemptive strides in their lives after what look like insurmountable setbacks and failures. It's usually noted that the very setbacks themselves are credited to preparing these people to deal with their future adversities, which they face as leaders. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his affliction with polio gave him the tenacity and character to lead the U.S. through the Great Depression and most of World War II. Winston Churchill returned from oblivion and profound mental depression, where he was forced to confront inner demons and fears, enabling him to later lead the UK through its darkest hour. Another good movie recommendation. In his book, Rising Above the Crowd, Christian writer Brian Harbour offers that success means being the best. Excellence means being your best. Success to many means being better than everyone else. Excellence means being better tomorrow than you were yesterday. Success means exceeding the achievements of other people. Excellence means matching your practice with your potential. Wisdoms, great and small, may seem like they come from blinding flashes of insight, but that's only the point at which they are birthed after long and often painful gestations. Wisdom is an accretion of insight gained over time and through experience. Let me say that again. Wisdom as an accretion of insight gained over time and through experience. As all of us struggle with our current situation related to COVID-19 virus, with social distancing, sheltering in place, and constant self-awareness of our hygienic practices, it is easy to create expectations for ourselves and others that are simply not realistic. I will not be the perfect parent to my children, and they will do things that I will find less than charming. You will pick up the last package of something someone else is also wanting, or vice versa. Despite our best efforts, we will not do things perfectly. We will make mistakes or make less than optimal choices. The best we and anyone can do is our best and not perfection. If we try to be wise and strive for excellence, then that is going to be the best that we can do. And we must be able to offer forgiveness to ourselves and others so that we can move forward doing the best we can do and not be marooned in a place of resentment towards ourselves and others for not being perfect. As Unitarian Universalists, we reject the flawed claims of perfectionism, and we embrace the wisdom of excellence. We do not tolerate the intolerance of perfectionism. We acknowledge that as inherent worthy beings, we really are enough in ourselves, even as we fall short in much of what we would do and would be. Daily we struggle, individually and collectively, to embrace our failures and our successes, and to own our shadows. We are open to the constant incremental revelations of life, realizing that with compassion and courage, we can become wiser and more enlightened from our encounters with our own brokenness and that of others. And with joy and hope, we in turn have a chance to make the world a wiser and more excellent place to be. Please join us now in our closing hymn, number 18, if you have a hymnal at home. If not, please join us. What wondrous love is this, O my soul, What wondrous love is this, O my soul? What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down beneath my sorrow's ground, friends to me gathered round, O my soul, friends to me gathered round, O my soul. To love and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all friends I will sing. To love and to all friends who pain and sorrow mend, with thanks unto the end I will sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end I will sing. Please join us in our closing words as I sing and as I say. Blessed is the path on which you travel. Blessed is the body that carries you upon it. Blessed is your heart that has heard the call. Blessed is your mind that discerns the way. Blessed is the gift that you will receive by going. Truly blessed is the gift that you will become on the journey. May you go forth in peace. Amen. And blessed be. Please join us now in our postlude and then our chalice extinguishing. Unmuted. You see it? All right. I unmuted. Now my mic is live. Welcome back. And I also wish to make sure that you're aware that we do have an offering that we can offer to us on PayPal anytime you'd like to. And now we extinguish our flaming chalice. We extinguish this flame that not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace, and I wish you wellness and life. Please join us for our socializing afterwards on Zoom as you are willing and able. Thank you, and look forward to seeing you again next week at 10 o'clock.